So this time we're going to be doing some Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel Crisis Protocol. So I got most of my stack of Guardians in one go. So obviously we've got all of the Guardians here, and ignoring the fact that Jean Grey and Cassandra Nova, I'm actually not using them in the Guardians this time around. So first off, we're starting off with Rocket and Groot. And these guys were not so bad to put together. Rocket in particular is a little small and fiddly, not too bad. And what's really cool, and I've said this before about the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff, is they give you extra bases, and I really like that. I plan on using some of these bases for other miniatures and games or whatnot. But the obviously you get the 2 minis, you get the bases, you get the cards for everything, and the instructions. So one thing to note about the instructions, and this is true for all of the early Marvel Crisis Protocol models, is that they did not print numbers on there for the steps. So there's no numbers on anything, but you can go to the website, and Atomic Mass has actually put it out there to with numbers and all to help assist you putting everything together. So what I do is I lay everything out for each step, and I do this for all the models that I put together. It doesn't matter what kind of model it is. I build all the steps first. I go one by one, and I make sure that I have all the pieces that I need and they're all cleaned. One thing to keep in mind for Rocket, he's got some super tiny pieces, and honestly, it's a little ridiculous that you have to put his jaw on his head, especially considering how small his head is. I'm not sure why they did that, but Atomic Mass stopped trying to emulate Games Workshop where you have to put a face on a body. Starlord is the same way. You have to put the face on the body, on the head, and then the hair on the head as well. And the head is 2 pieces. That is fucking ridiculous. I mean, the models are okay. They're good. They're good models for what they are. They could use with a little more of a ridge in the details, quite honestly. It's kind of difficult from time to time to paint up some of the details because they're not as well defined as you might expect. So the instructions here for Starlord are just the same as the instructions for Rocket and Groot, and there are no numbers. So unfortunately, this is another one of those where you have to go to the website, download you definitely want to download the numbered instructions, because it's going to be a little difficult to put together his head, considering that there are several pieces that go in there, and there are duplicates as well, as always, because and the thing is, I appreciate the duplicates as well, because I dropped his face and I had a hard time finding it. So sometimes having those duplicates is worth it. Star-Lord's cloak was a little strange to put, or not his cloak, but his jacket was a little hard to put together because the back there that's flaring out comes in 2 pieces. Now on to Gamora and Nebula. My box was damaged when it came in, but luckily it did not kill anything. So, all the pieces came out just fine. And I have to say, Gamora and Nebula were a little fiddly, especially the pose that Gamora is in. You have to kind of fiddle the arms around, and once you're done fiddling the arms around, you have to put the sword on the arms and kind of line up the hands. Now again, Gamora and Nebula, it's one of the early ones, so there are no numbers on the instructions. So the assembly guide, whereas it does show everything you need, you are definitely going to need to download the numbered version from Atomic Mass. There was a little bit of stuttering in my recording. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but I have since, as you'll see in the back of this video here, I've upgraded my camera, so things will be looking a little bit better from here on out once I figure out all the ins and outs of the new camera. Now, moving on to Drax and Ronin. I'll be honest with you, Drax was a little bit fiddly to put together. Not so bad. Ronin, I don't really like the way Ronin looks. I mean, I bought him anyway because I wanted all of the Guardians of the Galaxy that are, you know, Guardians affiliated here, including Angela, which Angela came later, and I do have the video from that as well. So obviously, just with everyone else, you know, you get the cards and the tokens and the instructions. The instructions for Ronin and Drax, again, are numberless. So even though it is fairly simple, just to be safe, I would definitely download numbers. But again, with Ronin, why are we putting the face in the cloak? You know, in his cloak robe thing. Why can't we just come with the face inside of the robe? I don't really understand why companies do that. The poses for these two are excellent. You know, they're very evocative poses. You know, they do like the one for Drax is perfect. It you know, emulates his character like, you know, like no other. Now I chose to supplement my Guardians of the Galaxy because it does come. There's only 8 Guardians. I chose to supplement them with Doctor Strange and Clea to put a little bit of mysticism in my team. I unfortunately, I thought, for some reason, I thought this Doctor Strange was the Sorcerer Supreme version, but it is not, and I obviously know that now. But I don't really like the way his costume looks, but, you know, it'll do. For the assembly, I left Doctor Strange out of the portal so I could paint him separately from the portal piece. And as you'll see later, I actually did a little bit of airbrushing for Doctor Strange, Clea, and for Nebula as well, because of the fact of how they're colored on the box. And I tried to kind of get the same sort of colors as was listed on the box. Now Clea, as you see me touching the little spell there, that is kind of fiddly to put on as well. I had to use a little bit of sprue goo to attach it because it was not acting right. For Angela and Enchantress, I still have not put together Enchantress, but I did put together Angela. Wow. I don't think that I have put together a model that is more fiddly than she is, because unfortunately she rests on those little tassel things there, which means you have to build the model and then attach it to the tassels and then attach the tassels to the base. Now, I don't know a whole lot about this character, which is funny because I do know most of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I have a couple of the old comics, but I don't remember Angela, so that's some research I have to do. But as you can see, she's kind of bouncy, and it's a little annoying to paint, actually. In hindsight, maybe I should have tried to paint the body separate from the tassels. So here we have a sort of pseudo blurry shot of everybody put together, with the exception of Angela. When I recorded this particular piece, I did not have Angela yet. And as you can see, Doctor Strange is kind of resting in there until I can get him painted. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate the painting of all of the Guardians, but I will demonstrate how I sort of did it. This is the same method I used for each one. So first off, what I did was I zenithal primed them all. So I hit them all with a black. It's a Rust-Oleum, I believe. I can't remember what company it is, but it's a very simple flat black primer that I got from Walmart, and it works very well. Has great coverage. It's not grainy. And then I took my airbrush and I did a zenithal prime, and I'm still kind of learning the airbrush, so it's not exactly perfect, but I'm getting there. So after the zenithal prime, I made sure not to leave any areas too dark, because obviously what I'm doing here is I am using contrast paint for the initial layer on most of these models. And the reason behind that is I really wanted them out on the table quicker, because I have a tournament here in about a week that I'm going to go to, and I wanted to make sure that I have all the Guardians at least table ready. So after being table ready, I will go back and do some more highlighting and some more layering and put some more colors on there and kind of regulate everything. But for now, I just wanted to make sure that I have everything at least painted up to, you know, tabletop standard, to, you know, just a basic paint job. So once I get the base layer down, and this is just for Groot, I just used Citadel's Contrast Wildwood because that's what I had on hand. I'm still on the fence about speed paints, but one thing to note is I did also make sure to put a matte sealer on the zenithal coat afterward, just to make sure that it was going to stick to the model. I don't think this step is really necessary, but it just made me feel a little bit better about it. So for Groot, second step, since Groot is kind of an easy model to paint, what I did is I took some Mornfang and a dry brush, and I just did, you know, a basic dry brush of, you know, a more colorful brown over that really dark wildwood to give it a little more color here and there, a little more, breathe some life into it. And I did that Mornfang dry brush all over. And it looks pretty good so far, but I definitely I had to go back with a lighter color. This time I was using the airbrush color that I got to paint my Waste Nomads, and that is a very thin khaki sort of color. And I did a dry brush all over Groot with that, just to kind of lighten things up a little bit and contrast out that color. The end result, after mixing it with just a little bit of oak brown, is that it looked pretty good, but it needed another coat as well, because I wanted to make things a little lighter. So the coat with the airbrush paint, now keep in mind airbrush paint is really thin, so it, you know, in hindsight I probably should have just used a regular paint to do this, but it worked out pretty well, because once I got that second dry brush on and I did a wash of Agrax Earthshade, everything sort of came together a little bit better, and it kind of normalized all of those different browns out, which, you know, is kind of one of the big uses for shades, is to kind of normalize all of your paint and sort of bring the layers together. Now, as I said, I'm not going to show everyone, but here we go. All right, ignore the desk here. I've had a couple of projects going on, but I finally finished my Guardians of the Galaxy. So here, first off, we have Starlord. All of these were painted in a mix of contrast paints and regular paints. And I do plan on going back and doing some edge highlighting and some other layering on these as well. But for now, I just kind of wanted them to be tabletop ready for a tournament that I'm going to be in. So there's Rocket, and of course with Rocket we gotta pull up Groot. And I think Groot turned out pretty okay. I did stop and do a little bit of highlighting on Groot. I do still need to go back and do a little bit on their bases and whatnot, because like I said, this is just kind of a basic paint job. I did spend a little bit of extra time on Drax and his skin. I think his skin turned out pretty good. I do still need to do a couple of highlights though. So that's how Drax turned out. And then we have Nebula. Now Nebula, Clea, and Doctor Strange all ended up with airbrushing, actually. And if you look, you can tell that I used like a deep crimson for the shadows. And then I sprayed over the top with a lighter purple as kind of like a zenithal paint job. And of course, here is Gamora. And white armor. I hate painting white armor, but I mean, she turned out okay. Like I said, just a basic paint job for these guys. And then we have Ronin, the Accuser. Now Ronin turned out a lot darker. Let's catch this focus real quick. Ronin turned out a lot darker than I thought he would. So I'm going to go back and lighten him up a little bit, definitely. And then we have Angela, which Angela ended up with a lot of metallics, and her skin ended up kind of spotty in a couple of places, so I do have to go back and fix that. And obviously her tassels here, I need to go back and do a little more highlighting on them. And there's Clea. Now Clea ended up too dark. Her skin ended up way too dark, and I have to definitely go back and fix that. But she was another one, like I said earlier, that got the airbrush. And Doctor Strange got a little bit of airbrush as well around here. Now his face turned out horrible. It had a little bit of a mishap with the paint, and it ended up splattering on his face, and I couldn't get it all off, so I just decided to just leave it as is, and I'll just go back and fix it later. But so that's how that turned out. I'm not entirely happy with the end result on some of these, but like I said, this will do for just tabletop ready quality. So that is it. That is my Guardians of the Galaxy. I think they turned out okay, at least, but I definitely need to go back and do a little more touching up. Thank you for taking a moment out of your day to watch my video, and if you would, please like, subscribe. Feel free to join me on Patreon and on Discord, as well as Instagram. I post up pictures of projects that I'm working on, and once again, thank you. I appreciate anybody watching.